With this year coming to a close, I've started looking ahead as to what my reading journey is going to look like and what books I'm going to want to read next year. There are definitely some books that I own already that I haven't had the chance to read yet, but my biggest takeaway from this year is that my reading taste is starting to change a little bit. I still enjoy mysteries and thrillers, and they'll always have a place on my shelf, but I find myself now more than ever using them as palate cleansers in between bigger and more complex books. So let's get into it and see what I'm bookmarking for next year. First set of books that I have here are all Stephen King. I've read even more Stephen King last year, and the more books of his that I read, the more I enjoy them, so I picked out a couple to get to this year. And the first one on the list is The Shining. I was originally going to read this December, but I'm in the middle of Fourth Wing right now, and with the way that it's going, I don't think I'm going to have the time to finish that and read this before the year's out. So I'm bookmarking this for January, because this is definitely a book of his that you want to read during the winter time, and there's no way that I'm waiting until next December to read it. And I think it's a good Stephen King book to kick off the year. I don't know if it's going to be the very, very first book that I read this year, but it's definitely going to be the first book of his that I read next year. The next one that I have here is arguably one of his most intimidating, but amongst Stephen King fans, it's supposedly one of the best, and that's The Stand. This book is far, far longer than anything that I've ever read before, so that's the main reason why I haven't read it yet. I'm a little intimidated by it, but when you have somebody that's written over 60 books, I believe he's up to now, and this is still regarded as one of the best, I mean, you have to give it a shot. And another very big and intimidating book, Stephen King's It. Now, I saw the movie adaptation, the 2017 versions for this book, both the first and second movie in 2017 and 2019, I believe it was when they came out. I kind of wish that I had done it in reverse, but at the time I wasn't really reading, so I understand, I just went to go see the movies. But even though I've still seen the movies, I'm very excited to get into this book. I still enjoy going back to the source material that movies or TV shows come from. Even though you know what's going on, it's still exciting to see how it was written in its original form. And the last set of books that I have here is a part of this awesome looking box set, which is the Bill Hodges trilogy. I think it was 2 years ago I read the first book in the series, Mr. Mercedes, and it is still one of my favorite books that I've read by him so far. And I've heard the rest of the series is good, so I think it's time to wrap up the series. This also opens up a whole new door for other books by him that I can read, because there is a character that is mentioned in these books by the name of Holly who appears in other books afterwards, and it's suggested that you read this trilogy before you enter those other books. So in finishing this series, it opens me up to other books like The Outsider and Holly. So not only do I want to cap off this series, but I also want it to open me up to some of those other books, so I'm very excited to get into this one as well. Alice Feeney is one of my girlfriend's favorite authors, and I've enjoyed the books by her that I've read so far as well, but I'd like to read some more. And this January, she is coming out with a new release called My Husband's Wife, and my girlfriend and I actually have tickets to go to a meet and greet of hers. So once we go to the meet and greet and we get our signed copies, I will definitely be reading My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. That will be happening in mid-January, and before we get there, I'd like to read a couple more of her books, and one that I've picked off is called His and Hers. I've chosen this one because this one is having its own on-screen adaptation coming soon. I can't remember if it's a movie or a TV show, but I think it's going through Netflix, and I believe it's coming out sometime in 2026. So I figured that this would be a good one of hers to pick off so that I can read the book and then we can watch the show together come next year. The next book that I have here is another one that I've put off for so long. I actually included this book in my 10 Before the End video over on TikTok, so its entry here is evidence that that didn't work out, and that's A Little Life. I have put off reading this book for so long, partly because of its size. I was not used to a book this size, but this book has been staring at me on my shelf since the day I bought it. In fairness, I think it's good that I waited this long, because I think if I tried to read this early in my reading journey where I was really not used to larger books, it probably wouldn't have been successful, and then I would have been annoyed because this book is just so highly talked about, and I don't want my personal preferences to kind of spoil the experience for it. So I'm partly glad that I waited that long, but I think I've waited long enough and it's time to get around to it. I mentioned before that I'm currently in the middle of reading Fourth Wing, which is another book that I put off for so long. I don't consider myself to be a romance or a fantasy reader, so I saw a lot of fandom surrounding this book, but it didn't really interest me because it didn't seem like the type of book that would fit my taste. But I finally decided to give it a shot, and I've actually been enjoying it way more than I thought I would. So for next year, I would like to read the second book in the series if all continues to go as well as it is, and that is is Iron Flame. In a perfect world, I will continue to enjoy Fourth Wing as much as I am, move on to Iron Flame, enjoy that one as well, and then move on to the third book in the series, Onyx Storm. That's a little too far off, and like I said, that's a perfect world, so hopefully I will get the chance to add both of these to my list for next year, but I am definitely going to check out Iron Flame at the very least. Next is another author that I've been wanting to get to for some time now, and that is Kristin Hannah. I have here The Nightingale and The Great Alone. I've picked these two because it's simply the two that I own at the moment, although I have heard that they are some of her best ones. I don't know which one I really want to read first. I think in general the concept of The Great Alone intrigues me a little bit more than The Nightingale, but I was also planning on doing a little bit of research, and if people say that The Great Alone is like her peak and that's her best, I don't know if I would want to start with that one because I would kind of gradually want to work my way up. If you're an experienced Kristin Hannah reader, then please let me know in the comments. But regardless, I'm excited for both of these books. They both fall into the historical fiction category, which is a genre I've never dived into before. So 2016 is going to be a lot of firsts. 2016? Way off. 2026, I am planning on being a lot of firsts for me, and checking historical fiction off the list is one of the goals I would like to accomplish. Going from an author I'm not so familiar with to an author that I am very familiar with, and that is Riley Sager. He has been an author that I have consistently read almost all of his books. I have two that I still have to check off the list. The first one being Survive the Night, which is an older release of his, and his newest release, With a Vengeance. I have not gotten around to purchasing a copy of With a Vengeance simply because it was released in hardback, and I'm crazy like that. If I have multiple books by the same author, I like to keep them all in the same format on my shelf. It's insane. We don't have to talk about it. So when it comes out in paperback, I will be purchasing a copy of that, and until then, I will be reading Survive the Night. Next is an author that I stumbled upon last year and was completely blown away by, and that's Claire Keegan's Small Things Like These. I can't remember where I saw this as a recommendation, but I read it last year. It's a novella. I believe it comes in at under 100 pages. 114 pages, close enough. I've read some good novellas before, but this book specifically, I have never seen an author pack so much meaning and character and heart into such a little amount of pages. I'm very excited to read some of her other books, and from what I can tell, Foster and So Late in the Day are two other highly recommended books by her. I believe those two are also novellas or just very short books in general, so I'm very excited to get into those as well because this one completely blew me away. Last year I read My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and I loved it so much. It wound up becoming one of my favorite books of the year. And without giving too much away about My Dark Vanessa, there are a ton of parallels and mentions to another book, and that is Lolita. Given how much I enjoyed My Dark Vanessa, I want to go back to the OG and see if it's just as good or which one I like better. In 2024, I read We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver, I'm still unsure of how to say that last name, and it blew me away. I thought it was great. And this book was a confusing book, but like in the best way possible. Some people didn't like it because of how confusing it was. I don't think it was ultimately all that confusing, but at the time I was reading a lot of thrillers, and thrillers have the tendency to wrap everything up in a nice, neat little bow at the end. So this was a change of pace where there's a lot of speculation involved. There's a really cool Easter egg all throughout this book, which I don't want to give away. And this author is coming out with another book in 2026 called The Caretaker. I haven't read much about what that book is going to be about, and I kind of want to keep it that way because I just want to go into it blind. I've seen a little bit of what it's about, and I'm all in. I'm so ready to read this book. The next book is a funny one for me, and that's Dear Debbie by Frida McFadden. At this point, I've read close to about 15 of her books, and that's simply because at the time, everything that she was writing was totally up my alley. As time has gone on, my taste has evolved, and I haven't really been enjoying her most recent releases like I usually do. Some people are arguing that's because her newer releases aren't as good as the older ones, but I'm not here to judge that. I just think it's a personal thing where I'm either getting used to the formula that she uses to write her books, or my brain is ready to just branch out to different things. But I'm still at the point where when she comes out with a new book, I will go and buy it on release day, and her newest book coming out, Dear Debbie, comes out sometime in January if I'm not mistaken, so I will be checking that one out. My next book here is another one that's been on my shelf for a little while, and that's On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I've picked this book because, again, it seems to be out of my comfort zone. It centers on a story of a mother and son, and it seems to be a pretty emotional story and overall unlike anything I've read before, so I'm excited to give this one a shot. My next two books are kind of summer themed. I started this trend last year where I was reading season-specific books, if that makes sense. I was keeping spooky books in spooky season or winter books in winter season, but I didn't get the chance to do that for the summer. So this time around, I wanted to make sure I had a couple books to read during the summer, and the first one that I have here is The Compound. Last year, my summer was consumed with watching Love Island with my girlfriend, and then this book came out shortly after that, and I heard that it was like kind of a mix between Love Island and Lord of the Flies, which is a crazy mix. The main character in this book wakes up on a desert island where she has to compete with other competitors, and it's all being televised for a reality television show. It seems totally outlandish, unhinged, crazy, and I am totally here for it. And the other book is one that made its rounds on social media and has won a couple of awards since it's been released, and that's The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. If I'm not mistaken, this one revolves around a summer camp, so I will again be reading this during the summer. I've heard a lot of great things about this book, as well as this author's other release, Long Bright River, which I also own, so maybe I'll get the chance to cross both off my list this year. Another book I read last year which completely blew me away is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I kind of started this journey of traveling outside of my comfort zone last year, and this was one of the first books I did it with. I found this to be such a well thought out book. It wound up becoming one of my favorite books that I read last year, and much like Fourth Wing, I wound up liking it much more than I thought I was going to. So I'm very excited to read some more books by V.E. Schwab, and the book that I have chosen to read next is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. Since its release, I've heard some great things about it, and I think ultimately it would be a good next step for me. She has some other books that are well regarded as well, but from what I understand, they're all a part of a series, and I think I would like to read one more standalone. For my last one, I'm casting a pretty wide net, and that's because it's the genre of classics in general. I have yet to read any classics, but I hear about a bunch of them all the time. One in particular is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I did read Of Mice and Men in high school, but I didn't pay that much attention to it, so I would also like to reread Of Mice and Men. But the list of classics goes on and on, including Animal Farm by George Orwell. There's also 1984 by George Orwell. There is a whole list. I could actually use your help in this of dropping some classic recommendations in the comments. I would prefer classics that you think are best to start with, but just drop any classic recommendations in the comments and I'll do my best to check them out this year. Okay, so that's my list for next year. I don't know if that's perfectly 26 books. To be honest, it was kind of hard to come up with 26 books because I don't like pre-planning everything that I'm going to read for the entire year, but I do like to see the direction that I'm heading in. I think it's around 26 books because I got a couple collections in there, and then again, the classics is just that wide net of just classics in general. But even if that is exactly 26 books, if I read as much next year as I did this year, which was I think 36, there's still room for other books. So drop any recommendations in the comments. Let me know what you think that I should be getting to next year. Let me know what your favorite books of this previous year were. Maybe I'll add them to the list. And until then, I will see you guys soon.